building blocks. So who are you building your DFS lineups around at the following positions? Gare Bear, start us out at guard, please.
Well, I'm glad you got through the first two sentences, Bedard.
Yes.
I'll fill you in on the rest of it now. Look, there's a lot of star players. There's a lot of big salaries on this slate, but I think I'm really going to be attacking the mid-tier tonight because of the presence of one game, and that is Raptors-Grizzlies, where not a single ounce of defense will be played, and the best guard in that game with Ja Morant on the sideline is Fred VanVleet. We talked about VanVleet against the Grizzlies last week on this show. He is more expensive in this game. He's now up to $8,700, but this is someone who's averaging 38.4 minutes per game in his last 4 games, and nothing about that is abnormal. This is someone who leads the NBA in minutes played per game. He is a volume player. He's also got a 62% true shooting percentage in that 4-game span. Gary Trent Jr. might not play in this game, and that would only give more usage to VanVleet. So going up against the Memphis team that has surrendered the second most DraftKings points per game to opposing point guards, it's really hard to ignore VanVleet on this slate.
Okay, Whalen, do you agree with that? Are you going to go with someone else?
That's exactly who I have on my little cheat sheet here. Fred VanVleet, 8,700 against this Memphis defense. Grizzlies are still the worst overall defense in the NBA. Like Gary said, they're terrible against opposing point guards. The one thing is, like, without Ja Morant, maybe that defense is a little better for as great as Ja is. You can get pushed around defensively, and when you have someone like maybe DeAnthony Melton playing more minutes out there, that probably does help the defense overall. But still, that's DeAnthony Melton playing 7 more minutes is not all of a sudden turn the Grizzlies into a great defense. And on top of that, Memphis also has the worst 3-point defense in the league. They're allowing opponents to shoot just under 40% from 3. Obviously, Fred VanVleet does a ton of his work from beyond the arc. Over his last 3 games, he's averaging 25 points per game and 4 made threes over that span to go with 6 rebounds, 5 assists, 1.7 steals, even 1 block per game from Fred VanVleet, who's like, 6 foot, 6'1". So I really think he's in a great spot tonight. $8,700, Fred VanVleet against that Memphis defense.
Okay, Mr. Friar, you're up.
Well, I think Fred VanVleet's a great pick. The guys are spot on with that, but I am going to go with somebody a little bit different. I will go back to that Raptors-Memphis game a little bit later, but I'm going to go all the way to the top with Steph Curry at 11.4K tonight against Phoenix. And I know, you might look and say, oh, that's a little bit chalky, but you got 6 players over 10K tonight on a small slate. Quite a few quality options. I mean, James Harden going up against the Knicks, Kevin Durant, of course, in that game too, in the Lakers, and then Damian Lillard is right there at 9.7. But the biggest thing for me with Curry, of course, you're getting the consistency with him, whereas James Harden has fluctuated a bit here and there. I know Curry had that down game a few games back, but obviously it's going to happen once in a while. The biggest thing, though, is that the Suns are one of the 10 worst teams versus point guards from a fantasy perspective, and they've surrendered the 5th most points per game to point guards this season. So that's where point guards are getting their fantasy production against the Suns. And Steph Curry, I mean, what does he do best? Score. So I think that he's got to be a guy that you at least get some exposure to tonight.
All right, Whalen, what about it forward, man? Who would you build your lineup around?
Yeah, I mean, if you're looking to pay up at forward, I obviously don't mind Kevin Durant, who's just over 11,000 going up against the Knicks. You can never really go wrong rostering Kevin Durant. I don't even think we need to dig too far into that one. Anthony Davis has been a little bit up and down. I think a lot of people have been down on Davis. That stat came out last week that he's like the worst jump shooter in the league. And that's kind of overshadowed the fact that he's still been a really good fantasy player this year, and his defensive stats are up compared to last season. I think he's in a pretty good spot tonight at 10-6 against the Kings team. Likely going to be without Rashawn Holmes again, likely going to be without Harrison Barnes. That's 2 starters in that front court. That means Anthony Davis is probably going to be guarded by Alex Len for a decent part of this game. I think that's a matchup that you don't mind attacking if you're Anthony Davis. Gary had mentioned that Toronto-Memphis game really piques his interest, and I think Pascal Siakam at 8,500, pretty fair price. But Scotty Barnes at 7,000, 41 fantasy points against Boston in their last game, 30-plus DraftKings fantasy points in 4 straight. With OG Anunoby sidelined indefinitely, I think we're going to keep seeing a lot of nights where Scotty Barnes' minutes are in that 35 to 40 range. We know Nick Nurse does not mind playing his starters big minutes.
So, Friar, what do you want to do here? Again, 5-game slate, so not a whole lot to choose from.
Yeah, so I'm going to go with a guy who's actually going to line up at point guard tonight, but you'll see him on DraftKings listed as a shooting guard or small forward because that is his natural position. Talking about Alex Burks, who's taken over at point guard for Kemba Walker, who has not only just been taken out of the starting lineup, he is now out of the rotation for the Knicks in the short term at least. Of course, with Burks' usage rate 18.6%. Kemba was at 21.1, yet Burks is the one that had has had two 40 DK fantasy point performances his last 5 games, and we got to expect that his usage rate is going to go up a little bit. And there are quite a few guys that have been ahead of him, but now he's playing the point, going to make a huge difference. And then, of course, when we're assessing this, you see on DraftKings, you'll see how the Nets have done against Burks' position, but he is playing out of his position tonight. We'll see how it goes. I think it's going to go fairly decently because the Nets are one of the 10 worst teams versus point guards from a fantasy perspective, and they've given up the 3rd most points per games to point guards this year.
Garion, what are the chances you're going with someone possibly against your Raptors there?
I will be going with someone against my Raptors. There's 2 really good options here. I'm going to lean with Dillon Brooks, who is in what I would basically call like the holy trinity spot tonight. 1, no Ja Morant so far this season. Only 159 possessions that Brooks has played without Morant, but he's averaging 1.32 DraftKings points per minute, has a usage rate around 36% with Morant off the court. This is a guy who might not pass to like a wide open Michael Jordan in the corner. Dillon Brooks loves himself. He thinks he's the greatest player on the planet, and it's amazing. Also, I talked about the environment for this game. You've got arguably the 2 worst defensive teams in basketball in this contest. This game went way over the number the last time these 2 teams met up. Now, no Morant in this one, possibly no Gary Trent. That could obviously affect the offensive output in this game. But Memphis has hit the over in each of their past 7 games. The Raptors have hit the over in 7 of their last 9 games. There's just no defense in this contest. And then you've got the hometown narrative. Not really that Dillon Brooks even needs more of a reason to shoot, but he's a Mississauga kid. He is playing in Toronto tonight. I could honestly see him taking 10 field goal attempts in the first quarter. And I'm not really exaggerating for effect here. I think that is something that could definitely happen. So if this game stays on script, unlike Memphis's last game, Brooks in 33 minutes, usage rate over 30%, I just think he's going to be easily able to outproduce this $7,000 price tag.
All right, dudes, we will go to the big beefy 5 spot there at center. So, Friar, who do you got? Let's pick up the pace a little bit too, gentlemen. We're running tight on time, according to my producer.
Jeez, okay. All right. Well, I'm going to go back to that New York game that we have tonight. I'm going to go with LaMarcus Aldridge again, similar price range to Alec Burks at 5.7K versus Burks 5.6. The Knicks have given up the 5th most DK fantasy points to centers this season. Talking about another guy that's jettisoned somebody out of the rotation, Blake Griffin, who is now out of the rotation. He's asking DeAndre Jordan for advice on how to handle this. So we all know he's definitely getting sound advice and definitely in the right frame of mind moving forward. But in all seriousness, if we've seen when LaMarcus Aldridge's minutes hover around 30, like we've seen in the last couple games, he's flirting with 40 DK fantasy points. So a team that's not done well against centers in terms of fantasy perspective, and Aldridge has done well, may get more opportunities. How are you going to take that at this salary?
All right, Gare Bear.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Yusuf Nurkic, who's been a frustrating DFS play so far this season. You don't know if he's going to play 20 minutes or maybe get close to that 30-minute range. And that obviously is a big factor as to whether or not he's going to hit value tonight. But at $6,400 against a Pistons team that has the worst total rebounding rate in the NBA, I think he's going to be able to dominate the paint, dominate the glass. This is someone across his last 6 games averaging 1.44 DraftKings points per minute. So it's not a matter of efficiency. Efficiency
yes.
In English. It is a matter of volume. And I'm going to cross my fingers and hope he gets there tonight.
Dude, amazing work. Whalen.
Thank you.
I'm going in the same direction here. 6,400 is a really good price for a guy who doesn't need big minutes to return, 4 or 5 times value. Oftentimes he sits in that 22 to 25 minute range, and he's still capable of putting 40, 50 plus DraftKings points on the right night. He had 40 fantasy points in 27 minutes against Utah in their last game. Had a 59 DraftKings points game against Sacramento before the holiday. And like Garion said, this is more about the matchup than anything else. Beyond Isaiah Stewart, the Pistons really don't have anyone to throw at a big burly body like Yusuf Nurkic.
Gentlemen, Slate approved pick time. Favorite bet on the DK Sportsbook. What is yours, Nick Friar?
So I have two that I really like a lot. Steph Curry and his points plus assists. It's at 35.5 going up against the Suns. Again, spoke about him earlier. But Alec Burks is the biggest one for me at 23.5 points, rebounds, and assists going up against the Knicks tonight. Last game, he was one free throw away from hitting the over on this, just on his points alone. He's hit the over in this 5 of his last 10 games. He's now at the point guard role. I feel like that's going to make a big difference for his assist number where he usually lacks. So this is a big one tonight.
Garion Thorne.
Safe play, Jaren Jackson over 6.5 rebounds at even money. The Raptors have the lowest rebounding rate in basketball across the last 10 games. They don't have Khem Birch tonight. If you want to get a little spicy with that one, Jaren Jackson to record a double-double is plus 550. I would sprinkle on that as well.
Nick Whalen, bring us home.
I like the Knicks to cover 6.5 at Brooklyn. That number was at 7 earlier this morning, already moving in the Knicks' favor. And like Nick F said, I like that Alec Burks prop, 23.5 points, rebounds, assists. I think that's an artificially low number. And, I think once we get a couple games of him at point guard under his belt, that's going to rise.